Jasmine Lin froze as billionaire Wei Zhang ridiculed her cheap American uniform in Mandarin, laughter erupting from first-class passengers. Her trembling hand steadied as she leaned close to his ear and responded in perfect Mandarin, "My grandmother fled Shanghai during the revolution too, Mr. Zhang." Before we dive into this shocking story of discrimination and courage, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever witnessed someone being underestimated because of their appearance. You won't believe how Jasmine turns the tables on one of the most powerful men in the tech world. Jasmine Lin had always lived between worlds. At 27, she moved through the narrow aisles of Continental Airways with practiced grace, balancing drink trays while deflecting subtle jabs about her appearance. The daughter of Dr. Terence Lin, a renowned African-American surgeon, and Mei Lin, a Chinese-American professor of Chinese literature who had passed away when Jasmine was 15, she had grown up navigating the complicated intersections of her identity. San Francisco had been her home all her life, its foggy mornings and diverse neighborhoods providing a backdrop for her childhood. Her mother had insisted on speaking Mandarin at home, reading classic Chinese poetry to Jasmine before bed, and teaching her calligraphy on Sunday afternoons. "Your heritage is your strength," Mei would say, guiding Jasmine's small hand as they traced characters together. "Never let anyone tell you that you don't belong to either of your cultures. You carry both within you, completely and wholly." Despite holding a master's degree in international relations from Stanford and being fluent in Mandarin, Cantonese, and French, Jasmine found herself serving drinks in first class rather than working in diplomacy as she had dreamed. The 2023 economic downturn had hit recent graduates hard, and Continental Airways had seemed like a stepping stone, a way to see the world while building connections for her eventual career in international business. "Could you move a little faster?" Thomas Wilson, her supervisor, snapped as Jasmine carefully checked the inventory for the upcoming San Francisco to Beijing flight. "The other girls finished their sections 20 minutes ago." The other girls were Amber Thompson and Kelsey Adams, both blonde, both hired 3 months after Jasmine, and both already assigned to the coveted international long-haul routes that Jasmine had been requesting for a year. "I'm being thorough," Jasmine replied, keeping her voice level. "Last month we ran out of premium whiskey for first class and had 3 complaints." Thomas rolled his eyes. "Just hurry up. And make sure your hair looks professional today. We have some very important Chinese executives in first class." The comment stung, as it was meant to. Jasmine had worn her hair in a neat bun, adhering perfectly to company policy. The implication that her natural hair could somehow look unprofessional was a familiar microaggression. As Thomas walked away, Amber approached, lowering her voice. "Don't let him get to you. He's always like that." "Always like that to me," Jasmine corrected quietly. "Never seen him criticize your hair." Amber shifted uncomfortably. "Well, you know how some of these older passengers can be. Especially the international businessmen. They have expectations." The conversation echoed painfully with a memory from Jasmine's childhood. She was 11, standing in the school cafeteria, tray in hand, hesitating between 2 tables. One filled with black students, the other with Asian American kids. When she approached the Asian table, a girl named Lily had looked her up and down and whispered something that made everyone giggle. At the black table, a boy named Jamal had asked loudly why she was trying to act black when her mom was Chinese. She'd eaten alone that day, and many days after. Her grandmother, Nai Lin, had found her crying that evening. The old woman had cupped Jasmine's face in her weathered hands and shared stories of escaping communist China in 1949, crossing oceans, and finding a community that eventually accepted her in America. "America is not perfect," Nai had said, "but here, you can fight for your place. And one day, the fight makes space for others." Those words felt hollow now as Jasmine reviewed her latest rejected application for international routes. The feedback cited passenger comfort considerations as the reason. A thinly veiled excuse that everyone understood meant certain passengers preferred flight attendants who looked a certain way. As passengers began boarding the Boeing 787 bound for Beijing, Jasmine took her position at the first-class entrance, professional smile firmly in place. This was a prestigious route, and she was only working it because Kelsey had called in sick at the last minute. She greeted each passenger warmly, helping them stow luggage and get settled. "Flight attendants, prepare for departure," came the captain's voice, and Jasmine secured the cabin, mentally preparing for the 13-hour journey ahead. She didn't know then that this flight would change the trajectory of her life, beginning with the arrival of Wei Zhang in Seat 2A, a man whose power and prejudice were about to collide with her complicated heritage in ways that would reverberate far beyond the pressurized cabin of Flight CA-988. Wei Zhang strode onto the aircraft like he owned it, which, given his 49% stake in a competing airline, wasn't entirely untrue. At 48, the CEO of Zhangtec commanded attention. His tailored Brioni suit, limited edition Patek Philippe watch, and the entourage of 6 executives trailing behind him announced his status before he spoke a word. Born in rural Anhui province to impoverished farmers, Zhang had clawed his way out of poverty through a combination of brilliant intellect, relentless work ethic, and a ruthlessness that had become legendary in tech circles. His facial recognition software company had made him a billionaire by 35, and 13 years later, his net worth had tripled. Now he viewed the world through the lens of winners and losers, with little patience for anyone he deemed beneath him. Those he considered beneath him included what he privately called deluded Chinese. Overseas Chinese who had adopted Western ways or, worse in his estimation, mixed-race Asians who claimed Chinese heritage. He believed they enjoyed the benefits of Chinese culture without understanding its deeper values or struggles. This prejudice was an open secret among his employees but carefully hidden from Western media. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Zhang," Jasmine greeted him with a professional smile. "May I show you to your seat?" Zhang glanced at her name tag, then at her face, his expression shifting from neutral to faintly disgusted. He responded not to her but to his chief operating officer in Mandarin. They couldn't find a real Chinese person to work this flight to Beijing. "This American airline thinks putting a black girl with a Chinese name will impress me." His entourage chuckled obediently. One younger executive looked uncomfortable but quickly masked it when Zhang's eyes flicked in his direction. Jasmine maintained her smile, pretending not to understand as she gestured toward Zhang's seat. "You're in 2A, Mr. Zhang. May I take your jacket?" Zhang switched to heavily accented English. "No need. I keep jacket." He deliberately bumped past her, his briefcase hitting her arm. As the other executives settled in, Jasmine began the pre-flight beverage service. When she reached Zhang, he looked up from his tablet with an expression of exaggerated surprise. "Ah, drink." "Yes." He pointed to the champagne. When she carefully poured Dom Perignon into a flute and presented it to him, he took it and immediately grimaced after a small sip. "This warm. Terrible service. I apologize, Mr. Zhang." "Let me get you a properly chilled glass right away," Jasmine responded, reaching for the glass. As her fingers touched the flute, Zhang tilted it, spilling champagne across her uniform. Gasps came from nearby passengers as the expensive liquid soaked into her blue vest. "So clumsy," Zhang remarked loudly in Mandarin to his colleagues. "Look at her cheap American uniform now. Probably never served real Chinese people before. These mixed breeds don't understand proper respect or service." The group of executives laughed, some genuinely, others with the forced quality of people pleasing a powerful man. An elderly Chinese-American woman in seat 3C looked away, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Jasmine felt heat rising in her face as champagne dripped from her vest. 12 years of her mother's lessons in dignity warred with the humiliation burning in her chest. A memory flashed, her mother calmly responding to a grocery store clerk who had spoken to her rudely, assuming she didn't understand English. May had answered in perfect English, then in Mandarin, then in Cantonese, leaving the clerk stammering. Steadying her shaking hands, Jasmine leaned closer to Zhang and spoke in perfect, Beijing-accented Mandarin. My grandmother fled Shanghai during the revolution too, Mr. Zhang. She taught me that true Chinese values include respect and dignity for all people. I'll bring you a fresh glass of champagne, properly chilled this time. The color drained from Zhang's face. His eyes widened, then narrowed dangerously. The younger executive who had looked uncomfortable earlier now stared at Jasmine with undisguised admiration, quickly looking away when Zhang turned to glare at his team. I want to speak to the captain, Zhang demanded, switching to English, his voice carrying through the first-class cabin. This woman is disrespecting me. Do you know who I am? Yes, sir. You're in seat 2A, and you're entitled to respectful service, which I am providing, Jasmine replied professionally, still in Mandarin. I'll inform the captain of your request while I get you a fresh glass of champagne. As she turned to walk away, her uniform still soaked, she felt every eye in first class on her back. What had begun as a routine flight had just become a battlefield, with Jasmine's dignity and career now hanging in precarious balance against the wounded pride of one of the most powerful men in tech, a man who wasn't accustomed to losing any fight, let alone one with someone he considered beneath him. Captain Jackson Davis looked more annoyed than concerned as Jasmine explained the situation in the galley. At 53, the white, silver-haired pilot had been flying for Continental for 27 years and had little patience for what he called cabin drama. So you responded to him in Chinese? Davis clarified, frowning. After he made comments he didn't think you'd understand. In Mandarin, yes, sir, Jasmine said. I didn't say anything unprofessional. I simply let him know that I understood what he was saying about me. Davis sighed heavily. Look, Lin, this guy is platinum-level frequent flyer who drops over $200,000 on our airline annually. His company books all their executive travel with us. Just, apologize for the misunderstanding and keep your head down for the rest of the flight. Apologize? Jasmine repeated incredulously. Captain, he deliberately spilled champagne on me and made racist comments. He says you were passive-aggressive and embarrassed him in front of his colleagues, Davis countered. It's your word against his, and frankly, the company's going to side with the billionaire. That's just reality. Amber Thompson, who had witnessed the entire exchange with Zhang, stood nearby arranging the beverage cart. Jasmine caught her eye, silently pleading for backup. Amber looked down, suddenly very interested in arranging the mini bottles of vodka. I'll handle Mr. Zhang for the rest of the flight, Davis concluded. You stick to the other passengers in first class. That's not standard protocol, Jasmine objected. And I need to change my uniform. Do it quickly then, Davis snapped. And Lin. Don't make this into something bigger than it needs to be. These cultural misunderstandings happen. As Jasmine changed into her spare uniform in the tiny lavatory, tears of frustration threatened to spill. This wasn't a cultural misunderstanding. It was straightforward discrimination, and the captain was enabling it. She thought of her mother, who had faced similar situations but always maintained that excellence was the best revenge. Be so good they cannot ignore you, May had often told her. When she returned to the cabin, the flight was at cruising altitude. Zhang was being served by Captain Davis himself, an unprecedented break from protocol that had passengers whispering. The billionaire looked smugly satisfied. For the next 2 hours, Jasmine performed her duties flawlessly, ignoring the burning sensation of Zhang's eyes following her every move. When she approached his row to collect trash, he loudly complained in Mandarin that his blanket was too thin, his seat wasn't comfortable enough, and the air temperature was too cold. Each complaint was designed to assert dominance, to remind her that he had power and she did not. Midway through the flight, Zhang made a call on the plane's satellite phone. Though he spoke quietly, Jasmine caught fragments as she passed. Need to talk to Reynolds, yes, the Continental executive, unacceptable service, knows who I am. Gregory Reynolds was Continental's vice president of customer relations and, as industry rumors had it, a regular golf partner of Zhang's. The implication was clear, Zhang was escalating this far beyond an in-flight incident. As passengers settled in for the long-haul portion of the flight, dimming lights and reclining seats, Amber finally approached Jasmine in the galley. "That was really impressive, you know," she whispered. "Standing up to him like that." "Thanks for having my back," Jasmine replied dryly. Amber had the decency to look ashamed. "I have student loans, Jasmine. I can't risk this job." "And I can. You're smarter than the rest of us. You have that fancy degree. You'll land on your feet if this goes south." Amber nervously glanced toward first class. "Just, be careful. Guys like that don't forget when someone embarrasses them." 13 hours later, as the plane touched down at Beijing Capital International Airport, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Continental's Beijing station manager. "Report to office immediately upon landing. Do not leave airport." In a glass-walled office overlooking the international terminal, regional manager David Wong wasted no time on pleasantries. "Mr. Zhang has filed a formal complaint about your conduct," he stated flatly, sliding a tablet across the desk showing an email from Continental's corporate office. "He says you deliberately embarrassed him and provided substandard service." "That's not what happened," Jasmine began, then detailed the actual events, including Zhang's racist comments and the spilled champagne. Wong's expression remained impassive. "Unfortunately, we only have your word for that. Captain Davis says he observed you being confrontational." "Confrontational?" Jasmine repeated in disbelief. "I responded professionally in Mandarin when spoken to in Mandarin. How is that confrontational?" "Mr. Zhang believes you were trying to shame him," Wong replied. "He's a very important client. So his comfort matters more than my dignity as an employee?" Jasmine felt a familiar knot forming in her throat, the same one she'd felt countless times throughout her life when facing systemic barriers. "This isn't about dignity. It's about protocol," Wong said, though his eyes betrayed discomfort. "You're suspended pending investigation. The company will cover your hotel for tonight, but tomorrow you'll fly back to San Francisco as a passenger, not crew." Sensing this might be her only chance, Jasmine surreptitiously pressed record on her phone under the desk. "Can you clarify exactly why I'm being suspended? Is it because I spoke Mandarin to a Mandarin-speaking passenger?" Wong shifted uncomfortably. "No, look, you know how these things work. Zhang is connected to half the board. Reynolds already called me directly. Some battles aren't worth fighting. So you're admitting this is about who he is, not what I did." Wong realized too late what was happening. "This conversation is over. Check your email for formal documentation of your suspension. Your return flight details will be sent to you tonight." In her hotel room overlooking Beijing's glittering skyline, Jasmine played back the recording, hearing the implicit admission of bias. Her hand hovered over her father's contact information on her phone. Terence Lin had always been her rock, the voice of reason and support, but she hesitated to worry him. Finally, she made the call, the 13-hour time difference meaning she caught him just finishing his morning rounds at the hospital. "They suspended me, Dad," she said after explaining the situation, her voice finally breaking. "Maybe I should just quit. Find something else." Her father's deep voice came through clear and resolute, "Jasmine Elizabeth Lin. Your grandfather marched with Dr. King and faced police dogs for the right to be treated with dignity. Your mother left her prestigious position at Beijing University to start over in America because she believed in creating a better world for you. Running away isn't in your blood. But I'm just one person against a corporation and a billionaire," Jasmine whispered. "So was Rosa Parks. So was your grandmother when she fled China with nothing but the clothes on her back," he reminded her. "One person who stands up often discovers they aren't standing alone for long." As she ended the call, Jasmine walked to the window, watching the city where her mother had been born, feeling simultaneously connected to and alienated from it. Tomorrow she would return to San Francisco in disgrace, her career possibly over. But something had shifted inside her. A determination that this wouldn't be the end of her story, but rather the beginning of a different kind of journey. Morning light filtered through the smog of Beijing as Jasmine made a decision. With 24 hours before her return flight, she would not spend it hiding in her hotel room. Instead, she took a taxi to the Hutong district where her mother's sister, Aunt Lin Mei, still lived in a traditional courtyard home that had somehow survived decades of modernization. The 68-year-old woman embraced Jasmine tightly, her small frame belying her strength. "Niece. What a surprise. Your message said you'd be working." Over jasmine tea and homemade dumplings, Jasmine recounted the incident with Zhang, her voice occasionally breaking despite her efforts to remain composed. Lin Mei listened intently, her weathered face showing no surprise. When Jasmine finished, she took her niece's hands in her own. "Your mother faced the same battles, you know. Not just in America, but here too." "What do you mean?" Jasmine asked, surprised. Her mother had rarely spoken of struggles in China, focusing instead on her academic achievements there. Mei was brilliant, top of her class at Beijing University, but she was a woman in a man's field, studying ancient literature when the university wanted to promote science and technology. The department head constantly undermined her, took credit for her research. Lin Mei poured more tea. "When she met your father at an academic conference in Hong Kong and fell in love, many here said she was betraying her culture by marrying a black American." "She never told me that," Jasmine said softly. "Because she wanted you to be stronger than the prejudice, not shaped by it." Lin Mei's eyes crinkled with a sad smile. "But strength comes from knowing the truth of what you're fighting." The old woman rose and retrieved a faded photograph album, pointing to a picture of a young Mei Lin standing proudly before a lecture hall. "Your mother didn't just teach literature. She changed how female scholars were treated at the university. She didn't run from difficult conversations, she mastered them." As Jasmine flipped through pages of her mother's life, moments captured before her birth, her phone buzzed with an unknown local number. Excusing herself, she answered cautiously. "Is this Jasmine Lin?" came a woman's crisp, accented English. "Yes, who's calling?" "Catherine Chen, South China Morning Post. I'm interested in discussing Wei Zhang's pattern of discriminatory behavior. I understand you had an encounter with him yesterday." Jasmine nearly dropped the phone. "How did you get this number?" "Journalists protect their sources," Catherine replied. "But let's just say someone on that flight was impressed by your courage and thought I should know about it. I've been investigating Zhang for months. You're not the first person he's targeted, just the first to stand up to him publicly. The timing seemed too convenient, too perfect. Why should I trust you?" "Because I have documentation of 3 separate discrimination settlements Zhang's company paid out in the last year alone. Because I know Continental Airways is trying to sweep this under the rug. And because I'm sitting in the coffee shop across from your aunt's Hutong, and I can prove everything I'm claiming if you give me 15 minutes. Jasmine's heart raced. This could be a trap, but it could also be the validation she desperately needed. "The Starlight Cafe on the corner?" "Yes. I'm wearing a red scarf. Come alone." After explaining to Aunt Lin Mei that she needed to meet someone, Jasmine made her way to the cafe, scanning for threats or signs of a setup. Catherine Chen was exactly where she said she'd be. A sharp-featured woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and the confident posture of someone accustomed to pursuing difficult truths. "Thank you for coming," Catherine said, sliding a folder across the table. "Everything in here is verified. 3 former Zhangtech employees of mixed Asian heritage, all forced out after Zhang personally intervened in their careers. All paid to keep quiet." Jasmine flipped through the documents, her stomach tightening at the familiar pattern. Why hasn't this been published? Zhang has extraordinary influence. He's threatened to pull advertising from any publication that runs negative stories about him. My editor is hesitant without ironclad proof that can withstand legal scrutiny. Catherine leaned forward. But a current incident, with multiple witnesses, recorded evidence? That could break the dam. As they spoke, Catherine revealed more about Zhang's operations. His company was developing facial recognition technology that was being marketed to corporations and governments worldwide. More troubling, there were indications the technology had significant bias problems, particularly with accurately identifying people of mixed racial backgrounds. He's hosting the International Tech Innovation Conference tomorrow, Catherine explained. Every major tech company will be there. Continental Airways is providing VIP service for all the executives, that's why your suspension is only pending investigation. They need flight attendants who speak Mandarin. Jasmine's mind raced. So I could potentially work this event. If you choose to, Catherine confirmed. But understand what you're walking into. Zhang will be the keynote speaker, unveiling their newest AI system. He'll be at the height of his power and influence. As they strategized, Jasmine's phone buzzed with another unknown number. Warily, she answered. Ms. Lin. This is Michael Huang, Mr. Zhang's executive assistant. The voice was hushed, nervous. I need to speak with you. It's important. How did you get this number? Jasmine demanded for the second time that day. From Continental's crew manifest. Please, I was on the flight yesterday. I saw everything. I've been documenting Zhang's behavior for 2 years, building a case. His voice cracked slightly. There's an internal investigation happening at Zhang Tech about labor violations and discrimination. I've been working with the investigators secretly. Catherine, overhearing, quickly wrote on a napkin, Huang is legitimate. My source. Can you meet us? Jasmine asked, making a split-second decision to trust. 30 minutes later, Michael Huang arrived, constantly checking over his shoulder. The 32-year-old handed over a flash drive with trembling hands. Email communications, internal memos, recordings of meetings. Zhang explicitly directs HR to avoid hiring mixed-race employees because they dilute company culture. He particularly targets those with partial Chinese heritage because he sees them as cultural traitors. Why are you doing this? Jasmine asked. You're risking your career. Michael's expression hardened. My sister is half Chinese, half Vietnamese. Zhang made a comment about her at a company function that. He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. Some things matter more than careers. As the three compared notes and evidence, a clearer picture emerged. Zhang wasn't just a prejudiced individual, he had built his prejudice into company policy and, more alarmingly, potentially into the AI technology his company was developing. The facial recognition software scheduled for release had been trained primarily on data sets of monoracial individuals, creating significant accuracy problems when identifying mixed-race people. This goes beyond one incident on a plane, Catherine concluded. This is about technology that could perpetuate bias on a global scale. Jasmine stared at the mounting evidence before her. Using it meant potentially ending her career at Continental, facing legal threats from one of the world's wealthiest men, and putting herself in the public eye in ways that would forever change her life. What would you do if you were in my position? She asked both of them. Michael answered first, I'd remember that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right despite the fear. Catherine nodded in agreement. And I'd remember that stories like this only change things when someone brave enough tells them. Have you ever faced a moment when standing up for yourself meant risking everything? Comment number 1 if you believe Jasmine should use this evidence to expose Zhang, or number 2 if you think the risk is too great. Like this video if you've ever witnessed discrimination and wished someone would speak up. Can one flight attendant really challenge a billionaire and an entire corporate system? Subscribe to find out what Jasmine decides to do at the tech conference confrontation. The Beijing International Convention Center gleamed with chrome and glass, a monument to China's technological ambitions. Inside, Continental Airways had set up a VIP lounge for tech executives attending Zhang's keynote address. Jasmine, to her surprise, had received an email reinstating her temporarily for critical Mandarin-speaking services required for the Zhang Tech event. They're short-staffed, Amber had texted her. Wang was furious but had no choice. Be careful. Jasmine adjusted her freshly pressed uniform, a small recording device concealed in her name badge, a precaution Catherine had insisted upon. The journalist would be attending as press, while Michael would be at Zhang's side as always, playing the loyal assistant while documenting everything. The VIP lounge filled quickly with Silicon Valley elites and Chinese tech moguls. Jasmine moved efficiently among them, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres, her Mandarin earning appreciative nods from Chinese executives unaware of the previous day's confrontation. Then Wei Zhang entered, surrounded by his entourage. He froze momentarily upon seeing Jasmine, genuine shock registering before his face contorted with barely concealed rage. He approached her directly, taking a champagne flute from her tray. "Interesting to see you working today," he said in English, loud enough for nearby executives to hear. "I thought incompetence was grounds for dismissal at American companies." Jasmine smiled professionally. "Continental Airways values employees who can communicate effectively with our international clients, Mr. Zhang. Enjoy the champagne." Zhang switched to Mandarin, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper, "You should have stayed suspended. After today, you won't work in any airline or any respectable company again. I've made calls. Is there anything else I can get for you, sir?" Jasmine responded in Mandarin, maintaining her composure despite the pounding of her heart. Throughout the pre-conference reception, Zhang made her job as difficult as possible. He called her over repeatedly for trivial requests, a different type of sparkling water, a specific brand of mineral water, a napkin, another napkin because the first had a barely perceptible wrinkle. Each request was accompanied by a critique of her service, her appearance, her presumed intelligence. "Bring me still water with exactly 3 ice cubes," he commanded in Mandarin, smirking at his colleagues. "Let's see if she can count that high." When she returned with the precise order, he took a sip and spat it back into the glass. "This tastes impure. Bring another." With each interaction, his comments became more pointed, alternating between English and Mandarin depending on who was listening. The Continental supervisor on duty, a local hire named James Lee, observed with growing concern but did nothing to intervene. As attendees moved toward the main hall for Zhang's keynote, he loudly instructed Jasmine to clean up a spill he deliberately created by knocking over a drink. As she knelt with towels, he stepped close, blocking her from view of others. "People like you are why we need to preserve pure Chinese culture," he hissed in Mandarin. "Mixed blood leads to mixed loyalties." The recording device captured every word as Jasmine responded calmly, "My mother would disagree, Mr. Zhang. She taught Chinese literature at Beijing University before moving to America." Something flickered across Zhang's face, surprise, perhaps, or a moment of doubt, before hardening again. Then she betrayed her heritage twice over. The conference hall filled to capacity for Zhang's presentation. Jasmine stood at attention against the wall with other service staff, watching as the billionaire took the stage to thunderous applause. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the Zhang Tech logo pulsing with animated energy. "Today, we revolutionize how the world understands identity," Zhang began, his English crisp and rehearsed. "Our new FaceCore AI doesn't just recognize faces, it understands heritage, culture, and belonging." Over the next 20 minutes, he unveiled an artificial intelligence system that claimed to analyze facial features to determine ethnic background with 99.7% accuracy. The demonstration showed the software correctly identifying Han Chinese faces, Caucasian faces, and black faces from a test group. In a world where identity fraud is rampant, where security depends on knowing exactly who people are, FaceCore provides certainty, Zhang continued. Airports, secure facilities, even retail environments can now know precisely who they're dealing with. Catherine Chen, seated in the press section, caught Jasmine's eye and nodded subtly toward the stage. This was the technology they had discussed, the system potentially built on biased data sets. As if on cue, Zhang announced, "Now, for a live demonstration. He gestured to the audience. Would any volunteers like to test FaceCore's capabilities? Hands rose throughout the audience. Zhang's assistant selected 5 people, all apparently monoracial, who stood before a camera connected to the system. FaceCore correctly identified each one's predominant ethnic background to impressed murmurs from the crowd. The system works by identifying key facial markers that have been established through thousands of years of distinct ethnic development, Zhang explained proudly. Science confirms what we intuitively know, that ethnic backgrounds create unique, identifiable patterns. From her position against the wall, Jasmine felt a growing unease. The demonstration had conspicuously avoided any mixed-race participants. Taking a deep breath, she raised her hand when Zhang asked for additional volunteers. Zhang's eyes narrowed when he saw her, but with hundreds watching, he couldn't refuse without appearing petty. Yes, the flight attendant. Come up. Jasmine walked confidently to the stage, feeling hundreds of eyes tracking her movement. She stood before the camera as instructed. The system scanned her face, the processing indicator spinning on the massive screen behind her. After several seconds, noticeably longer than it had taken for previous volunteers, the system displayed its result: error, inconclusive analysis. A murmur rippled through the audience. Zhang's jaw tightened as he forced a laugh. Sometimes with mixed ethnic backgrounds, the system requires additional processing. Let's try again. The second attempt produced the same error message. Zhang's composure slipped slightly as he turned to one of his engineers off stage, barking instructions in Mandarin too low for microphones to catch. The engineer quickly typed commands, and the system ran a third scan. This time it produced a result: subject, 78% East Asian, 22% African heritage. As you can see, Zhang recovered smoothly. Even with mixed backgrounds, FaceCore eventually provides accurate analysis. Jasmine spoke up, her voice clear in the momentary silence. Excuse me, Mr. Zhang, but that's incorrect. My heritage is exactly 50% Chinese and 50% African American. The audience stirred. A technology reporter from the front row called out, "Is this indication of a calibration issue with the software?" Zhang's pleasant facade cracked slightly. The subject's self-reported heritage may be technically correct in terms of parentage, but genetic expression varies. The algorithm measures phenotypic presentation, not family trees. That sounds like the system is making assumptions based on appearance rather than actual heritage, Jasmine noted, maintaining a respectful tone while the recording device in her badge captured everything. Couldn't that lead to inaccurate profiling? Several journalists were now taking particular interest, cameras and recorders pointed at the increasingly uncomfortable exchange. Zhang signaled to his team, clearly eager to end the demonstration. "We have time for one more question," the moderator announced quickly. Jasmine raised her hand again, and before the moderator could select someone else, she asked in perfect technical Mandarin, "The training data for FaceCore, did it include statistically significant samples of mixed-race individuals across multiple combinations of heritage, or was it primarily trained on monoracial subjects?" The technical precision of the question in flawless Mandarin created a palpable shift in the room. Chinese technologists in the audience leaned forward with interest. Zhang's engineering team exchanged nervous glances. Zhang stared at her with undisguised hatred before responding in English, "This is not the appropriate forum for technical debates with service staff. FaceCore has been thoroughly tested across demographic groups. But not mixed-race demographics, correct?" Jasmine pressed, still in Mandarin. "Because your own results just demonstrated a significant margin of error with my face." Zhang's control finally shattered. "This is why we don't put unqualified people in positions they don't belong," he snapped in Mandarin. "A half-breed serving drinks should not question technology she cannot possibly understand." The slur rippled through the room like an electric shock. Chinese attendees gasped. Translators hesitated, unsure how to convey the deeply offensive term. Cameras flashed as journalists recognized the unfolding story. Catherine Chen was already typing furiously on her tablet. Michael Huang, standing near the stage, surreptitiously adjusted his own recording device. In that moment, Wei Zhang had confirmed every allegation against him in front of hundreds of witnesses and dozens of recording devices. The moderator rushed to the microphone, attempting damage control. Thank you all for attending this exciting product unveiling. Technical discussions will continue in breakout sessions. As attendees filed out, many were already sharing clips of the exchange on social media. Jasmine felt simultaneously exhilarated and terrified by what she had done. There would be no going back now. Her phone buzzed with a text from Continental Airways, report to hotel immediately. Employment terminated effective immediately. Zhang had made good on his threat more quickly than she had anticipated. But as she gathered her belongings from the staff room, her phone buzzed with dozens of notifications. Messages from colleagues, news alerts about Zhangtech CEO's racist outburst, and an email from Catherine Chen with a single line, "It's starting. Are you ready?" By the time Jasmine returned to her hotel room, the first video clips of the confrontation had already gone viral on Chinese social media platform Weibo, jumping quickly to Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Mandarin speakers were providing translations of Zhang's offensive comments, with hashtags #ZhangTechRacism and #JasmineSpeaksUp trending in multiple countries. Catherine Chen called within minutes of Jasmine's arrival. "My editor is running with the story in tomorrow's edition and online in 2 hours. We need to move quickly. Zhang's PR team is already claiming mistranslation and cultural misunderstanding. What do I do?" Jasmine asked, watching her social media notifications explode with friend requests and messages from strangers. "We compile everything, the flight incident, the suspension, the tech conference. We show the pattern." Catherine's voice was urgent but controlled. "I'm sending you a secure upload link. Get me the recording from your badge, and any other evidence you have." For the next 3 hours, Jasmine worked with Catherine to document every detail, creating a comprehensive timeline supported by recordings, witness statements Michael had collected, and the discrimination evidence they'd compiled. At Catherine's suggestion, Jasmine crafted a single, powerful social media post to share across platforms. "Today I was fired for questioning whether AI technology should recognize the humanity of mixed-race people like me. As a flight attendant with Continental Airways and a woman of Chinese and African American heritage, I've experienced how bias becomes discrimination. This isn't about one incident or one company, it's about the technologies being built today that will shape how we're all seen tomorrow. #MyFaceMatters." She attached a professional photo of herself alongside a screenshot of the FaceCore error message, with a link to Catherine's forthcoming article. The post went live at midnight Beijing time, prime daytime hours in the United States. By morning, it had been shared over 300,000 times. Continental Airways' social media accounts were flooded with angry comments. Their stock had dropped 5% in after-hours trading, with analysts citing reputation risk and potential discrimination liability. Jasmine's hotel room phone rang at 6 a.m. It was James Lee, the Continental supervisor from the conference. "Ms. Lin, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Your termination has been placed on hold pending review. Mr. Wang would like to speak with you." "I'm sure he would," Jasmine replied. "But I'll be speaking with my attorney first." She hadn't actually retained an attorney yet, but Catherine had put her in touch with a Chinese-American civil rights lawyer in San Francisco named Sophia Washington, who had left 3 messages already. As Jasmine prepared to check out of her hotel, her phone rang again. This time it was Professor Alan Winters, her linguistics professor from Stanford. "Jasmine. I've just seen the news. They're claiming you misunderstood the technical terminology in Mandarin. Absolute nonsense. You were one of my best students in advanced technical Mandarin. I've already given a statement to CNN." Throughout the day, more supporters emerged. Former classmates created social media graphics with the hashtag #IStandWithJasmine. 3 other continental flight attendants of Asian descent came forward with their own discrimination stories. A Chinese-American Pilots Association issued a statement of support. Zhang's response came via a carefully worded press release. Zhang Tech regrets the cultural misunderstanding that occurred during our product demonstration. English is not Mr. Zhang's first language, and certain technical terms do not translate precisely between Mandarin and English. We reject any characterization of our company or leadership as discriminatory. The statement only fueled the controversy, with linguistic experts pointing out that Zhang's slur had no technical meaning that could have been mistranslated. By evening, Continental Airways had issued their own statement. We are investigating the incident involving our employee Jasmine Lin and will take appropriate action based on our findings. Continental Airways is committed to creating an inclusive environment for employees and passengers of all backgrounds. Catherine called again as these statements circulated. Zhang's business partners are getting nervous. 2 potential investors have already pulled out of deals. But be prepared, this is when things get ugly. What do you mean? Jasmine asked. I mean Zhang has resources and he's angry. My sources say he's hired a crisis management firm specializing in character assassination. They'll dig into your past, looking for anything they can use. As if on cue, Jasmine received a call from her father. Sweetheart, there are reporters outside my medical practice. Someone's told them I'm involved in insurance fraud. It's completely false, but they're asking patients questions as they come in. Jasmine felt the blood drain from her face. Dad, I'm so sorry. This is because of me. No, Dr. Lin said firmly. This is because a powerful man is afraid of the truth you're telling. I've called my attorney. We'll handle this. You keep fighting. But the attacks continued. Anonymous sources claimed Jasmine had been fired from previous jobs for incompetence. A website appeared documenting supposed complaints from passengers about her service. Her college boyfriend received calls asking if she had ever made racist comments about Chinese people. The pressure was immense. Jasmine barely slept, constantly responding to new allegations while trying to stay focused on the larger issue. Catherine's article had expanded into a series examining bias in AI technology, with Jasmine's experience as the central case study. Technology ethics experts were weighing in, many confirming that facial recognition systems frequently showed bias against mixed-race individuals. A week after the conference, Continental Airways offered a settlement, full reinstatement, back pay, and a promotion to international routes, with a non-disclosure agreement preventing Jasmine from discussing Zhang or the incident publicly. In her hotel room, now paid for by a supportive Chinese-American Cultural Association, Jasmine considered the offer. It would solve her immediate problems. She could return to the career she had worked so hard to build. The financial security was tempting. But that night, she dreamed of her mother. In the dream, Mei Lin sat beside her on a plane, both of them in continental uniforms. Remember what I taught you about bridges, Dream Mei said softly. Jasmine woke with tears on her face, recalling her mother's frequent metaphor, we are bridges between worlds, between cultures. A bridge doesn't apologize for connecting different shores. The next morning, she declined Continental's offer. As the second week of the controversy began, Michael Huang made a decision that would change everything. Despite threats to his career and potential legal consequences, he came forward publicly as a witness to Zhang's pattern of discrimination, providing emails and internal memos documenting years of problematic behavior. I can no longer be complicit in a system that judges people's worth based on their heritage, he stated in a joint interview with Jasmine on a major news network. The technology we're building will shape society for decades to come. It must recognize the full spectrum of human diversity. The interview shattered Zhang's carefully constructed defense. No longer was this one flight attendant's word against a billionaire's. Now there was documentary evidence, internal communications, and a credible insider confirming everything Jasmine had alleged. Sophia Washington's office overlooked San Francisco Bay, the Golden Gate Bridge visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 45, the civil rights attorney had built her reputation on landmark discrimination cases, but even she seemed sobered by the scope of what they were facing. "Let me be clear about what we're up against," Sophia explained, spreading documents across her desk. "Wei Zhang has a net worth of $12 billion. He employs 3 law firms full-time. Continental Airways has their own legal department of 60 attorneys. Both have virtually unlimited resources to fight this." Jasmine nodded, having expected as much. "And we have truth, evidence, and growing public support," Sophia replied. "But this will be brutal. They'll attack every aspect of your life, looking for any inconsistency or mistake." 3 weeks had passed since the Beijing incident. Jasmine had returned to San Francisco, staying with her father while the media storm continued. Zhang had filed a defamation lawsuit against her, claiming $50 million in damages to his reputation and company valuation. Continental Airways was negotiating behind the scenes, still hoping to settle without admitting wrongdoing. "I want to file our own lawsuit," Jasmine said firmly. "Against both Zhang and Continental, for discrimination, wrongful termination, and creating a hostile work environment." Sophia studied her carefully. "That's aggressive. A countersuit means no quick resolution. We're talking about years of litigation, depositions, discovery. Your entire life under a microscope. If we don't fight back, nothing changes," Jasmine insisted. "Other employees continue facing discrimination. Zhang's bias technology gets implemented worldwide. Continental keeps enabling racism while talking about diversity in their advertising." The attorney nodded slowly. "All right. But you need to understand what you're committing to. This isn't just a legal battle. It's psychological warfare." Within days of filing the countersuit, Jasmine understood exactly what Sophia meant. Zhang's legal team subpoenaed her complete employment history, educational records, medical files, and all personal communications for the past 5 years. Continental's attorneys demanded access to her private social media accounts, including deleted posts and direct messages. Meanwhile, Zhang escalated his public relations offensive. A supposedly independent tech ethics website published an investigation questioning Jasmine's credibility. Continental leaked performance reviews with context removed to suggest she had ongoing professional issues unrelated to discrimination. The psychological toll was immense. Jasmine could barely sleep, jumping at every phone notification, constantly bracing for the next attack. Her father faced a medical board inquiry based on anonymous complaints that his attorney confirmed were traced to a private investigation firm on Zhang's payroll. Financial pressures mounted as legal bills grew. Although Sophia had taken the case on contingency, the associated costs of expert witnesses, court filings, and case preparation quickly depleted Jasmine's savings. By the 3rd month, she was considering selling her condo to fund the fight. "Maybe we should consider their latest offer," Jasmine said during a particularly difficult strategy session. Continental had proposed a larger settlement that would allow her to acknowledge that misunderstanding, without directly retracting her claims. "Is that what you want?" Sophia asked, not judgmentally but genuinely curious. Jasmine stared out at the bay, watching fog roll in beneath the bridge. "What I want is for this to be over. For my dad to stop getting threatening phone calls. For my former colleagues who've supported me to stop facing retaliation." The night before her deposition was scheduled, Jasmine sat at her childhood desk in her father's house, reviewing preparation materials. The settlement papers Continental had offered sat nearby, requiring only her signature to end the legal battle with at least some financial security intact. Her phone rang, Michael Huang, calling from a new number. "They've offered me $2 million to recant," he said without preamble, his voice tight with stress. Zhang personally called to deliver the offer. "Are you going to take it?" Jasmine asked, not judging, understanding the pressure he was under. "I've been asking myself what kind of world I want to live in," Michael replied quietly. "One where money determines truth, or one where we stand by what's right even when it costs us. After a long pause, he continued, I'm not taking the money. And I've been compiling more evidence. Internal emails show Zhang directed the engineering team to reduce the mixed-race detection accuracy testing requirements because it was wasteful spending to optimize for edge cases. That's direct evidence of deliberately building bias into the technology, Jasmine realized, sitting up straighter. Exactly. I'm sending everything to Sophia tonight. I'll see you at the deposition tomorrow. After they hung up, Jasmine looked at the settlement papers again, then at a photograph on her desk, her mother at a university protest in Beijing in the early 1990s, standing up for academic freedom. The choice became clear. She called Sophia. I'm not settling. We're seeing this through. The attorney's voice held both concern and respect. It won't be easy. Nothing important ever is, Jasmine replied, tearing the settlement papers in half. That night, she dreamed again of her mother. This time they stood together on a bridge spanning a vast chasm. Some bridges must be built at great cost, Dream May told her. But once built, they stand for generations. The Superior Court of California in San Francisco buzzed with activity as Jasmine's case finally went to trial 8 months after the Beijing incident. News vans lined the street outside, and spectators queued for limited public seating. Inside the wood-paneled courtroom, Judge Elena Ramirez presided over what had become one of the most closely watched discrimination cases in recent memory. Sophia Washington had assembled a formidable legal team, largely working pro bono after the case attracted national attention. Continental Airways attorneys projected professional confidence, though their client had already suffered significant damage. Their stock had fallen 17% since the incident, international bookings were down, and they'd lost a major contract with the Asian American Business Association. Zhang's legal team occupied an entire section of the courtroom, their expensive suits and imperious demeanor reflecting their client's approach to the case. Zhang himself sat stoically at the defense table, occasionally whispering to his lead counsel. The plaintiff will call Jasmine Lin, Sophia announced on the third day of trial. Jasmine walked to the witness stand, feeling the weight of every eye in the courtroom. For months, others had been telling her story, spinning it, distorting it, challenging it. Now was her chance to speak her truth directly. After establishing her background and qualifications, Sophia led Jasmine through the events on the flight and at the tech conference. The recordings were played in court, with certified translators confirming the accuracy of the translations of Zhang's comments. When the defense began cross-examination, Zhang's lead attorney, Marshall Reynolds, adopted a tone of condescending skepticism. Ms. Lin, you've made quite extraordinary claims about Mr. Zhang's intent. Isn't it possible you misunderstood his comments due to cultural differences? I speak native-level Mandarin, Mr. Reynolds. The term Mr. Zhang used has no cultural ambiguity, it was a clear racial slur, Jasmine replied calmly. And yet you chose to confront a customer, violating Continental's service protocols. I chose to respond in the language spoken to me, which is not a violation of any protocol. The employee handbook actually encourages using passengers' preferred languages. For 3 hours, Reynolds attempted to undermine Jasmine's credibility, suggesting alternative interpretations of events, implying she had orchestrated the conference confrontation for publicity, even questioning whether her language skills were as proficient as claimed. Throughout, Jasmine maintained her composure, answering clearly and directly, occasionally glancing at her father in the gallery for support. When Reynolds finally concluded his questioning, Judge Ramirez called a recess. In the courthouse hallway, Catherine Chen approached with breaking news. Zhang's company just lost a $200 million government contract. The Commerce Department cited ongoing ethical concerns about their facial recognition technology. Continental's executives huddled with their attorneys, their body language suggesting increasing anxiety. That afternoon, their lead counsel approached Sophia about resuming settlement talks, this time without requiring Jasmine to retract her claims. They're getting nervous, Sophia observed. But we don't negotiate now. We finish what we started. The next day brought Michael Huang to the witness stand. Despite visible nervousness, he methodically presented internal documents showing Zhang's pattern of discrimination against mixed-race employees and the deliberate decision to reduce accuracy testing for mixed-race facial recognition. Mr. Zhang specifically stated that investing resources in improving mixed-race recognition was pandering to Western political correctness at the expense of core market functionality, Michael testified, introducing an email that created audible reactions in the courtroom. Zhang's attorneys objected vehemently to the admission of internal company documents, claiming corporate espionage and breach of confidentiality agreements. Judge Ramirez overruled most objections, finding the public interest in potential discrimination outweighed proprietary concerns. As the trial entered its second week, Continental Airways' strategy visibly shifted from defending their actions to distancing themselves from Zhang. Their attorneys emphasized the company's updated anti-discrimination policies and diversity initiatives, while subtly suggesting Zhang had pressured them into inappropriate actions against Jasmine. The turning point came when Zhang himself took the stand. Initially composed and articulate, he presented himself as a misunderstood innovator whose comments had been taken out of context. But under Sophia's cross-examination, cracks appeared in his carefully constructed facade. Mr. Zhang, you testified that your company values diversity. Can you name 3 mixed-race employees at the director level or above in your organization? Sophia asked. Zhang hesitated. We hire based on qualification, not race. That wasn't my question. Can you name 3 mixed-race executives in your company? I don't categorize my employees by race, Zhang replied stiffly. Yet your company is developing technology that does exactly that, categorizes people by race, Sophia noted. And according to your own engineering documents, that technology is 93% accurate for monoracial individuals but only 62% accurate for mixed-race individuals. Why the discrepancy? Zhang's composure slipped. The technology reflects biological reality. Mixed features are inherently more difficult to categorize because they're less consistent. Less consistent? Or just less important to your business priorities? Our priorities reflect market demands, Zhang snapped. The majority of our clients are concerned with identifying primary racial categories, not edge cases. The phrase, edge cases, hung in the air, the same dehumanizing terminology used in the internal emails, reducing mixed-race individuals to statistical anomalies rather than people deserving equal treatment. Sophia pressed further, so you're acknowledging that accurately identifying mixed-race individuals was not a priority in developing this technology? It was a secondary consideration based on market size and return on investment, Zhang replied, his business logic revealing the underlying bias. By the time Zhang left the witness stand, his testimony had reinforced rather than refuted the discrimination claims. That evening, Zhang Teca's board of directors called an emergency meeting. As the trial progressed, additional witnesses came forward. 3 former Continental flight attendants testified about systemic bias in route assignments and promotion decisions. A Zhangtec engineer confirmed that concerns about bias in the facial recognition system had been repeatedly dismissed by leadership. Outside the courtroom, public opinion had solidified largely in Jasmine's favor. Tech ethics organizations issued reports on the dangers of biased AI systems. Asian American civil rights groups organized rallies supporting the case. Several major corporations suspended contracts with Zhangtec pending the trial outcome. In a stunning development, Continental Airways CEO Richard Palmer announced his resignation, citing the need for new leadership to rebuild trust. The company's stock fell another 8%. Zhang, facing mounting pressure from investors and the board, attempted to leave the country for urgent business meetings in Shanghai but was stopped at the airport due to a court order requiring him to remain available for testimony. On the trial's final day, as attorneys prepared closing arguments, breaking news rippled through the courtroom. The Securities and Exchange Commission had opened an investigation into Zhangtec for potentially misleading investors about discrimination liabilities and the accuracy of their technology. Michael Huang had provided evidence that the company had falsified diversity reports required by government contracts, showing doctored employment demographics to meet inclusion requirements. The technology accuracy report submitted to clients had similarly overstated the system's performance with mixed-race subjects. The legal case that had begun with one flight attendant standing up to discrimination had evolved into a sweeping indictment of corporate ethics, technological bias, and the responsibility of companies to ensure their products and workplaces treated all people with equal dignity. As Sophia delivered her closing argument, she reminded the jury that the case was about more than one incident or one company's policies. This case asks us to consider what kind of future we're building. Will we allow technology to reinforce and systematize our existing biases? Will we permit powerful individuals and corporations to define whose humanity counts and whose doesn't? Or will we insist that every person, regardless of their heritage or appearance, deserves to be seen, recognized, and respected for exactly who they are? 1 year after the fateful flight to Beijing, Jasmine stood at the podium of Stanford University's Memorial Auditorium, addressing a packed audience of students, faculty, and technology professionals at the inaugural Conference on Ethical AI and Inclusion. The court's decision was just the beginning, she explained, her voice carrying confidently through the hall. The real work happens in classrooms like yours, in engineering labs, in corporate boardrooms, and in the daily interactions where we choose to recognize or dismiss each other's humanity. The landmark ruling 3 months earlier had sent shockwaves through the tech industry and corporate America. The jury had found both Wei Zhang and Continental Airways liable for discrimination, creating a legal precedent for how bias in artificial intelligence could constitute a form of systemic discrimination. The $28 million judgment against Zhang personally and $15 million against Continental had been significant, but the policy implications reached much further. Continental Airways had undergone a complete leadership transformation, with a new CEO implementing comprehensive anti-discrimination training and revising promotion policies to eliminate proven biases. Their new chief diversity officer, a mixed-race former pilot, had personally reached out to Jasmine to consult on their reformed policies. Zhang had suffered an even more dramatic fall. Following the verdict, the SEC investigation had uncovered financial improprieties beyond the falsified diversity reports. Facing multiple federal charges, he had resigned as CEO of Zhang Tech. The company, now led by a reformed board of directors, had scrapped the biased facial recognition system and launched a completely redesigned version developed by a diverse engineering team with explicit accuracy requirements across all demographic groups. Most significantly, the case had sparked a national conversation about bias in artificial intelligence. Congress had introduced the Algorithmic Fairness Act, requiring companies to test and certify AI systems for bias before deployment. Major tech firms had established ethics committees with real authority to review products before release. After concluding her Stanford lecture, Jasmine met with a group of mixed-race computer science students who had started a campus organization focused on inclusion in technology. Their enthusiasm reminded her of her own college days, before the weight of workplace discrimination had tempered her optimism. What made you decide not to go back to Continental when they offered you your job back? One student asked. Jasmine smiled, remembering the moment when she had declined Continental's post-verdict offer of reinstatement with a substantial promotion. Sometimes your path changes in ways you never expected. What happened to me was painful, but it revealed a purpose I might never have discovered otherwise. That purpose had taken shape in the Lin Foundation for Inclusive Technology, which Jasmine had established using a portion of the settlement money. The foundation provided scholarships for mixed-race students in STEM fields and funded research on eliminating bias from artificial intelligence systems. Later that evening, Jasmine met her Aunt Lin Mei, who had flown from Beijing for a rare visit. The elderly woman presented Jasmine with a carefully preserved bundle of journals. These were your mother's, Lin Mei explained as they sat in Jasmine's new apartment overlooking the bay. She documented her own battles against discrimination at the university. She would be so proud to see you continuing her fight in your own way. Jasmine carefully opened the first journal, recognizing her mother's elegant handwriting. The entry described a confrontation with a department head who had dismissed her research on female poets as secondary to the classical male canon. May had stood her ground, eventually establishing the university's first course focused on women's literary contributions. "She never told me about these struggles," Jasmine said softly. "She wanted you to find your own path without being burdened by her battles," Lin May replied. "But I think now you can appreciate what you inherited from her, not just her language or her features, but her courage." The following week, Jasmine boarded a Continental Airways flight to Washington, D.C., where she was scheduled to testify before a congressional committee considering the Algorithmic Fairness Act. This time, she was a passenger rather than crew. As she settled into her seat, a young mixed-race flight attendant paused while checking seatbelts, recognition dawning in her eyes. "You're Jasmine Lin," she said quietly. "I just wanted to thank you. I was hired after the new policies went into effect. My supervisor told me that before your case, someone who looks like me would have been assigned only to domestic routes because of passenger preference concerns." Jasmine smiled, thinking of how many unseen lives had been impacted by one moment of standing up against discrimination. "What's your name?" "Sophia," the young woman replied. "Named after my grandmother, who was half Japanese, half black. She faced discrimination her whole life but never got to see things change." "Well, Sophia, it looks like you're exactly where you belong." As the plane taxied for takeoff, Jasmine gazed out the window at the San Francisco skyline. She thought about her mother's metaphor of bridges between cultures and realized that her own life had become a different kind of bridge, one spanning from a past where bias was accepted to a future where it was challenged. The journey hadn't been what she'd planned when she first put on a Continental Airways uniform. It had been harder, more painful, and ultimately more meaningful than she could have imagined. As the plane lifted into the cloudless sky, Jasmine opened her mother's journal again, drawing strength from the words of the woman who had first taught her that heritage was never a limitation, only a foundation upon which to build something new. Next month, she would start her new position at the International Human Rights Commission, heading their corporate accountability division focused on technology ethics. It wasn't the career she had trained for, but it was the one she had earned through experience no university could provide. #lessons learned. Jasmine's story teaches us that courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting despite it. When faced with discrimination, she could have remained silent, protecting her career at the cost of her dignity. Instead, she chose to stand up not just for herself, but for everyone who would come after her. Her journey shows that systemic change often begins with one person refusing to accept injustice. True transformation requires evidence, allies, and persistence. Jasmine succeeded not just through personal courage, but by methodically documenting discrimination, finding supporters who validated her experience, and refusing to be silenced by threats or bribes. She reminds us that our heritage is never a limitation but a foundation of strength. The story also highlights how technology can either reinforce or challenge existing biases. AI systems reflect the values of their creators. When diverse perspectives are excluded from development, technology perpetuates the same prejudices it claims to transcend. Only by ensuring that all identities are fully represented can we build systems that truly serve humanity in all its diversity. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wished you had spoken up? Share your experience in the comments below. What would you have done in Jasmine's position when faced with both corporate and personal attacks? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of courage against injustice. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that their identity is something to celebrate, not apologize for. Thank you for joining this important conversation. Together we can build a world where everyone is seen, heard, and valued exactly as they are.